What lies ahead for indirect tax? So the discussion may have boiled down to multiple tax rates on different types of popcorn, but there is no doubt that simplification of the goods and services tax regime or GST regime by reducing the number of tax slabs is critical. Indirect taxes contribute almost 60% of total tax receipts. And any changes here can obviously reduce the tax burden on consumers and potentially increase consumption. Now, there are a raft of expectations on the taxation front as well, including on imports and then demand for amnesty schemes for pending litigations. The union budget is being presented on February 1st. I reached out to Prashanth Agarwal, partner at PwC, and I began by asking him what were the key expectations from his camp on indirect tax.
Yeah, on the GST front, I think I'm looking at how do they further plan out on the GStat perspective in terms of beginning of that. Would they make more simplifications around the GST law? And they brought in certain compliance-related changes, which are invoice management system related changes which came out on the GST, whether they bring it as part of the law that one can look at. Some of the aspects around how the procedural aspects on the GST will be taken up, that is something that can look out. I don't think major changes will be made on the GST front because as we have discussed in the past, it is the council which really takes the calls. Those get ratified through the bill if it is required to be undertaken from an amendment standpoint. So nothing which would be surprising, I feel, from a GST standpoint. But yeah, I mean, one can make a wish list of whether they will start including goods which have not been included from an amendment standpoint, natural gas, etc. But we know that it has yet not been decided in the council. So it won't happen in this meeting. So there is a laundry list of wish list, but unfortunately, because most of it has not been approved upon from a council perspective, may not happen.
So the other element of indirect tax is obviously customs. That is one area where there are lots of expectations.
Sure. So I think on the custom side, I would divide it into 2-3 parts. One, from a procedure standpoint, there are certain compliances which the industry has been pushing for simplification. So like there is a compliance which is required to be done for related party imports, which is known as special valuation branch procedure. So there the industry have sought for simplification because there are a lot of delays in terms of getting those special valuation branch proceeding orders undertaken. Second is around simplification of the authorized economic operator scheme, which is basically helping through the V-channel imports. So there also the industry has made representation and looking for some kind of simplification. Third is around sector-specific benefits like airports. There has been asked that whether benefit like project import can be extended to them. So that's something which is being discussed about. Fourth would be around the exemptions. So we know that the FM had in the past made it clear that the exemptions which are there in customs would be there for 2 years and they would be revisited. So a lot of sectors are seeking renewable of those exemptions as well. Then, of course, benefits to solar industry, EV, because these are the themes which are playing out well in terms of investments, will continue to be sought after from the industry's perspective. And lastly, because there are a lot of litigation which are coming up on the customs side, which have been dragging on, that again is a piece where the industry would want to see some kind of relief. As we have seen the trend the government had brought in the last budget, Vivas Vishwas from the income tax perspective, then even in GST, there has been amnesty scheme. And the similar ask is there on the customs side to take care of the past litigation. Could there be something like a amnesty scheme which can be really brought out? So those are big themes which may play out as you move along. And last, if I can make, FM had made a declaration about simplifying the customs law. White has really not seen much on that. So what are the steps taken on it and where do we see moving from that perspective? Would be good to hear from an FM perspective.
Two quick questions. So one is you mentioned exemptions. Is there an illustration of what kind of exemption that people want to be continued or removed? And the second is, are you seeing anything or is there a clamor on anything on the tariff front itself, on the actual tariffs?
Yeah, so I think on the exemption front, there are exemptions provided to automobile industry in the EV sector. So that's something which obviously on the parts and components side, companies would want it to continue because the ecosystem is still getting developed. The other would be around the whole sector of EMS, which is already there. So there again, on the components, essential components, something would be required. Also on the solar side, wherever possible, not the exemption, but at least the lower rate of duties, if they can continue, is something that the industry continues to look forward for. Solar already, there have been a lot of increase in the rates which have happened. And of course, they would want to seek wherever there are benefits left over. Because we have now battery storage system which is coming up. You have green hydrogen which is being talked about. So on those new areas of investments, companies, semiconductor as an industry, there are investments which are being made. are areas where at least concessional rate or the exemptions is something that they would look at. Simplifying the process of claiming the exemption is also something that is there. So there are procedural aspects which at times create a hindrance in terms of claiming those exemptions. So there again, there has been an ask from the industry to see if that can be taken care of. Some of the other sectors, I would say MRO, there already the exemptions have been there, so they would want to see if those can continue from their perspective.
Right. And nothing on absolute tariff itself, right? Yes.
See, again, on the tariffs, the expectation was that some of the announcements one can expect because the tariffs have been increased over years. And as you see, since you are saying that some of your ecosystem on the manufacturing side has matured, you would want to make the industry more competitive. So from that perspective, the tariffs are something where you would want them to be more normalized than increased further. So, I mean, that's what the expectation would be, that you are making it a more free, competitive market. So why not?
Prashant, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks as always.